Well, hello, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well. It's good to see all the fine faces on this morning or afternoon or evening or really late night, depending on where you are in the world. I said morning instead of good morning because, well, I mean, some people have the opinion that it's a good morning. I don't know, but I say morning. So morning to you all, top of the day. Um, it's good to see everybody for our Too Sexy for November 2023 meetup. And hey, Jeremy, good to see you. We got a lot of people in the room live today, but if you're watching from YouTube afterwards, thank you for joining us there. Hope you find this content useful. To my knowledge, this is the only Too Sexy focused meetup in the world right now. So I mean, come on, y'all need to step it up and start your own little meetups and get some good content going, right, Daniel?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's actually really good because I mean, there's a lot of users of Too Sexy, so it's really good to kind of connect and share with each other. And I know people has varying levels of experience with Too Sexy, and things are ever evolving, right? So it's good to connect and at least keep pace of things that are of interest to you. Um, I guess let's start out with a little bit of announcement kind of stuff, and I'm going to free form this just a bit because I did not prepare. Shame on me, but yeah, I've had so much going on. Let's see, 2SX, see if I can put this up here. Um, Out on GitHub, it looks like since the last meetup, now I was looking back, I don't think we met in October due to a conflict, but I think we met in September on that. So just looking at things that have happened since September as far as releases go. Looks like on the 20th of September, there was a release of 16.6.0. And there is, let's see, as of September 22nd, there is an LTS, which Daniel, I have to give it to you. I really like the name you came up with for LTS this time. That was creative. I racked my brain forever trying to help with those words. But now, like if for those in the rest of the developer world, probably were thinking long-term support. Now it's long-term stable, which I think is more reflective in the spirit of what you intend for it to be, right?
Yep.
So, but no, it's nice to see that mark because correct me if I'm wrong, but that really means it's been battle tested, so to speak, and has kind of gotten a stamp. It doesn't mean that there won't be any bugs or anything like that. It just means that for all the general use cases that are common, it seems to be pretty stable and safe to use, if you will, on a production environment.
Exactly. I mean, it means that, and it also kind of means that if there is no newer LTS out yet and there is a security problem or really a major bug, we will look to create a patch release because sometimes intermediate releases could have new risks and stuff. And yeah, if there were something serious and you were really just doing production grade updates, you weren't changing anything, you're not developing, you're just trying to keep your system maintained, then the LTS is usually the one to go for.
Yep.
So we do the same thing here. I mean, we have a few hundred installations, and basically all of our customers that have like an upgrade contract, like a maintenance fee that they pay every month, we will lift them to the next LTS when, even if nothing's going on, but we won't like do any other upgrades if we're not developing and needing new features.
Nice. So I guess really the big story of version 16 so far has been, at least the buzz around this, is the typed code system that's in here and some of the improvements that's happened over the last few releases of this. But if you're not familiar, now there's a typed version of Razor, which really helps with a lot of different things, including the capability, if you jump through a few small hoops, to be able to get IntelliSense in your code environment like VS Code when working on a Too Sexy app. So that's really nice to see because it can kind of, I mean, how many times have you written a piece of code and it looks right and you're so close to it, you don't realize that something's just a little character's off or something like this. And there's nothing to tell you that it's off. You just run the app in the browser and boom, it blows up, right? And you kind of have to chase it down. This should help a lot with that, keep you from making a lot of silly mistakes, that commonly plague us. So it's nice. I've noticed a few people talking about converting old apps to the type system, and also just kind of rewriting. And I know there's kind of two different schools of thoughts for different purposes there, for how to kind of get there. And some people kind of try to convert it, if you will, but some people really just think in the new paradigm and rewrite it from scratch, which seems to be probably the quicker path, but may not learn quite as much along the way, as far as drawing parallels to old code. Daniel, not to put you on the spot, but since you're here, do you have anything else you'd like to highlight on the last two releases here that people would want to know?
Well, basically, I think one of the things that Steve just mentioned also is we did a lot to improve the error messages, just because there's all these common problems that you have. And actually, the reason why we did it was going to typed code. We just noticed if you're starting the journey there and you're rewriting things, you're going to run into a lot of very typical problems. And I mean, we of course knew how to solve them, but we realized people would have a hard time doing that. So even simple things like just using the content object, which disappeared on purpose. And that's why we did that. And I think that was really, really helpful for everybody. What else? I mean, there was a whole lot. I think what is not to be forgotten as well is like version 16 LTS. The previous one also introduced dynamic data sources. In case you guys haven't figured that out yet, it's basically the ability to create a data source in your app code, which you can then use in Visual Query and stuff, which is really helpful to like get things into drop downs, or a lot of times you have a very special operation for which there's just no data source that does that for you, maybe a special kind of filter or something. And previously you'd have to do all that in code, which resulted in you losing features like caching or paging and things like that, which you could easily do in the Visual Query. And being able to do that, that's been in 1601, I believe. I'm pretty sure people haven't picked up too much on that yet, but it's quite a big deal. So it just offers you that extra flexibility where you need it. Then also in 1601, just to kind of remind everybody, the new formulas came out. Those are also super powerful because they offer a lot of really neat advantages, including the ability to get data from web services, for example, in a much easier way, because it handles the promise and all that for you in a way that previously was really hard to do. So like things that used to be like 10 lines of code in a formula is like 2 lines at the moment, and that kind of stuff. So I think that was really important. But otherwise, yes, the big typed code is such a huge change that it takes some working, but it does make life a lot easier.
I'm looking forward to using some of the dynamic
It
data
is
sources.
so
We
worth it.
just haven't had the opportunity just yet to do that. So it sounds like, that was possible before, right? Sort of, but you had to kind of know what you were doing and get back there, but you've just surfaced it in a much easier, nicer way to build those data sources. Is that correct? Custom data.
No, previously you had to make a compiled DLL
right
for the Visual Query to pick it up. And it was very difficult, and there were a few breaking changes throughout the roadmap. So I'm pretty sure people just stayed off of it. And then we figured out a way how to compile the code dynamically in the background, because we need DLLs. But so basically, if it's in the right folder and it has the naming convention, it'll just be compiled. And if you change it, it'll be available immediately. So it's a huge thing. It was a lot of work, actually.
I guess there was some stuff done around the picture stuff as well recently, right? Some parameters or something, if I saw correctly. I can't remember where I saw this in the notes, but just support.
So a lot has happened, and I just like to quickly put in the chat just I think a link everybody should know and use. Maybe you can quickly go for this. This is the quick reference. If you're doing any typed work at the moment, this is probably your primary place to see how to do things. So we've basically reworked the entire tutorial. Almost every sample exists in both a typed and an untyped code. Again, probably more than 100 hours of work, but it just allows you to have all these use cases where you can see how would it be done, what does the code look like, and even things like JSON serialization, or all that stuff you just quickly need, but you probably couldn't figure out. Just a simple example, right where your mouse is right now, like the scrub HTML there. So the second one on that accordion, so down a bit, I guess I'm a little delayed, that one, for example, right? So now, for example, if you get a string property, you can see in the code sample line 10, you can also like just flush the HTML in the same command.
Oh, nice.
Which is just super helpful when you're doing all these things like a teaser extract or something from an existing content. And so this is really, really a treasure trove for everybody. You should really go through it. Even if you think you know everything, I'm pretty sure you're going to find 30 things you haven't figured out yet.
That is very nice. I mean, I know this is my go-to whenever I've got a question about how to do something, if I can't find it in here, then yeah, I'll go down the rabbit hole trying to, find the right documentation somewhere. But this is great because the examples, especially, very, very nicely done there. Thank you for all the effort in that. I know that's not easy, trying to think of everything that kind of is most important to cover. So really appreciate that. I guess this is really a good starting place too. Like if you're, wanting to learn some of the new type stuff, just seeing these examples here would really, really help bring to light.
Yeah, and a lot of things, for example, previously, if you had a query and you wanted to parameterize it, it was difficult to impossible. And right now it's really easy, right? Same thing here, you'll just find a sample and it'll just say, oh, okay, here you do it, pass the parameters in and you're ready to go. And all that kind of stuff, people would simply not even discover if they were just looking at the code.
That is great. Good. Well, I didn't have anything else really that's going on in the community, but Daniel, maybe is there anything that specific to the Octane world? Because I know a lot of people that are joining here are mostly in the DNN space, but we do want to kind of cater towards that as well. And I know there's a lot of movement there, especially with the onset of .NET 8 and some of the changes in the 5 gazillion different variations of Razor and Blazor, excuse me.
Sure.
Anything there specific worth mentioning?
Lots, actually.
Yeah.
But let me just quickly finish off with the too sexy. 2 more details. Something that wasn't even spearheaded by me, but is now going to become really important is when you install DNN, it includes kind of an old Razor and an old C#. And that's been a real bummer because you can't use like question mark dot syntax or a lot of really neat, simple things. And in the next version of DNN, probably version 10, it'll be auto installed to be C# 7.3. That's going to make the templates much, much easier. And it's actually always been part of DNN. It's just not pre-installed by default. And what we're probably going to do in one of the next releases is we're going to introduce the ability for an app to say that it needs those features, which makes it easier to distribute something that has more advanced code, because that's going to be really valuable. What's also important to know, what's going to come out in a few weeks is we just lifted the entire UI to Angular 16. That doesn't sound very amazing, but what we're also doing is we're completely reworking the entire, let's say, picker system. Think of any kind of dropdown, which may not feel like a big deal, but it is actually a very big deal. There's all these small things that are not really nice. For example, if you have a dropdown that can have multiple items, you always have to go to further dialogues, even if you're just selecting one. Or if you'd like the dropdown to show the ID and the title at the same time, for example, or additional texts, whatever, we're going to make all that possible, and we're going to make it much more generic. So there's something really cool coming up there in, my guess, three weeks or so.
Just out of curiosity, does that also include things like, because I know a trouble spot for a while has really been the icon picker. Like if you're using an icon library of some sort, you kind of have to jump through a few hoops just to get that halfway working, right?
So the goal is to do that in a next step. It's related to that. We've been postponing that all the time, especially because icon libraries have actually changed how we use them nowadays than previously. But that's one of the pain points that we're going to look at as well. Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Nice.
What we're also experimenting with, sounds like very advanced kind of, but we're experimenting with the ability to share a field definition. So here's a typical scenario. You might have like a person content type with like 4 or 5 fields, and you might have an extended person content type, which kind of has another 3 extra fields. And at the moment, you tend to kind of repeat a lot of the definitions, which is annoying. And so there's quite a few scenarios where it would be nice to just inherit the definition of another field. And we're working on that. I think we'll also have a beta out in the next release. And that's actually going to make like just more sophisticated projects quite a bit nicer.
Nice.
So Octane, yes, very big deal, because .NET 8 is coming out probably November 16th. So if you guys are keeping an eye on that, .NET 8 is important for all kinds of reasons, but one of them, of course, is that it's like another long-term release, whereas version 7 was announced as being just like 1.5 years of whatever. And so some people have been hesitant to go from .NET 6 to .NET 7 because it felt like it's a very temporary solution. And .NET 8 is bound to come out in, yeah, it's just a bit more than a week. And that's going to be like a big deal. Very likely Octane 5 is going to come out on the very same day, because typically one of Sean's strategies a little bit is to kind of like ride the wave as it's happening. And that does have a downside, because .NET 8 is going to bring some really crazy cool Blazor improvements, which we're really looking forward to. And they probably won't be in Octane 5 yet.
I was kidding with Daniel Veladas one day, and I sent him a video that I found that was explaining Blazor, you know, the way it's going to be, and it was hilarious. But I mean, you know, in a kind of a cool but funny, sad way a bit, is that the video was really well done. It's like about 16 minutes long to explain all the various flavors of Blazor and ways you can use them. It's crazy what they're pulling off there.
Yeah. So for you guys, it's probably hard to do a raise of hands in here, but I mean, I'm going to assume some of you have used Octane or Blazor before. Some of you haven't. But just as a very basic idea, Blazor was kind of, let's say, similar to web forms in some ways, that you would have like a click event and you'd have C# code handling that click event. Okay, that was like the ASP.NET times. And then JavaScript didn't really work too well with that, which ended up giving us Razor. And then Blazor kind of had that fully interactive mode again, where every button had the code behind. And that was nice for a lot of scenarios, especially for applications, but for websites, it wasn't that practical, because it was really hard to just generate pure HTML and like make it SEO compliant. For example, if you go to Google PageSpeed and you try to look at octane.org on Google PageSpeed, you'll just get a blank screen, right? And that's because the HTML that's produced here just isn't that proper. It's basically a blank page with a bit of JavaScript. And here within a few seconds, it'll just tell you nothing to show, right? It's just failed. Whereas on the other hand, if you try to do it on blazorcms.org, that's like our showcase for creating websites with a dash, I guess.
Yeah.
I think the other domain exists, but it probably hasn't been hooked up. Right, and here we got it working, but we had to do some magic to make sure that the browser gets real HTML. And the next flavor of Blazor is actually going to be a lot like Razor, where you just can write your templates and it produces HTML, and that's it. And that's really exciting for the web use case, where we'd just like to have the newest tech. We'd like to have like components to make our logic better separated, but we're not too concerned about, you know, all those web what's it called? The WASM stuff. You know, we just want to create cool stuff. And that's what basically I would say is like one of the core features of Blazor in .NET 8. And Sean is really trying hard to get it to work, but there are some hoops to jump through. So my guess is this is probably going to take a few months.
Interesting that it seems like if you read at least the headlines that suddenly server side has become so important.
Yeah, I've seen quite a bit of people joking, well, not really joking, but sort of joking that, yeah, we're returning to web forms essentially, you know, with some of this. It's like, oh, yeah. But I mean, it has its especially security benefits, right? You know, things being on the server instead of everything being in the browser.
Well, and there was always a very big problem, and that is that the browser can't access the database. You know, I mean, it's to get the browser to show a list of something from the database. If you're running it in the browser, well, you have to get the data there first, and that just makes a lot of things really complicated. And yeah, in the new model, we're kind of back to square one, but for what we're usually doing, it's great.
Yeah, and I apologize. I probably didn't bridge the gap for some people that may be looking at this and or hearing what you're saying, like we're like scratching your head, like, wait, I thought this was about 2Sexy. Okay, so for those that don't know, 2Sexy can run essentially the same apps on both DNN and Octane. Totally different frameworks, but unified in the CMS portion of that for 2Sexy. So if you haven't, you know, not everybody's interested in that latest greatest, you know, moving at the speed of light technology on the .NET Core side of things, but some of you may be. So with 2Sexy being able to run on there, it really kind of changes the proposition potentially for Octane use in a production environment. We have yet to do one for us. I don't think we're gonna move that quickly, especially when things like .NET 8 drops and throws the whole thing for a loop, and and Octane runs to catch up with that, and you know, all that. But it is exciting nonetheless. So thanks, Daniel, for that. Anything with 2Sexy specifically for Octane though that is noteworthy, or is it kind of same? If you've seen it for DNN, you've seen it for Octane.
Yeah, I would say it's really the identical experience. Some of the in-page admin isn't quite as slick yet, but I'm guessing we'll be able to do that too. But otherwise, except for adding modules, which is just different, it really feels identical.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm going to stop my screen share now. So today we're kind of doing the show and tell format, and I don't know if anybody has anything cool or something, you know, interesting that you ran into recently with 2Sexy that you'd like to share, but kind of open up the floor for anybody to share anything they would like. This is obviously not super formal. I would encourage you, since this is being recorded though, to make sure that anything that you are sharing is okay to be recorded and shared on YouTube afterwards, evergreen. So just be aware of that. Does anybody have anything they would like to share?
I have a quick question for Daniel. I'm really enjoying the typed version of 2Sexy, and I'm also becoming a convert to the visual query. So two things that big changes for me. I'm just wondering, is there a way of writing one visual query that would let me have two different parameters where, let's say I have a last name and a first name, and sometimes I might, let's say I might want to find Donald Duck, right? But sometimes I might just want to find everyone in the duck family. So is there a way of constructing the visual query so that it can sort of deal with, oh, sometimes a parameter just isn't there?
You're muted, Daniel, just in case.
Yeah. So in a lot of scenarios, you can do it, but there is not a clean parameter exists, yes, no data source. But to be honest, I think that would be a gap that would be A, easy to fill, and B, would make a lot of sense. I'm not quite sure like where to put it that people would find it, because it's like an if-then kind of a thing, like if parameter, then this, otherwise that. A very common use case, though, is maybe I could just show something. Let me just check if I have anything running right now that I could just quickly demo. Give me a second. Because a very common thing you can do on a lot of data sources is that there's a fallback stream. Okay, so basically what it would do is if the like, let's say the item filter doesn't return anything, you can then tell it to just return the data from another stream. It's close to what you want, but it's not identical. So let me see if I can, let me see, where do I share this? Share screen here. Right, this is live, so I might be messing up something, but let me just create this. Here we go. And I don't really know my data well enough to be sure that I'm gonna show you everything, but let's just say I would have an app source, and let's just say I have a filter, and let's pretend quickly that this would do something. And now, for whatever reason, okay, the ID filter doesn't have that, but let's take the value filter instead, right? So let's say we're just getting, let me check what kind of data I have here, but I guess I have company data here. So let's quickly call this company. So at the moment, the filter wouldn't do anything, right? But let's just hit run here. We should probably get all 11 items here, but the filter doesn't give me anything, of course. So let's quickly look if there's something reasonable I could filter for. Here's an industry field. I'm just going to filter for web, for example. Step one, I'm just going to do it fairly simple. Let's run that. So now we're getting just 2 hits here. Now, of course, if I had a parameter in here which didn't exist, then of course nothing would come back. But what I could do is I could then say, well, the fallback is just all the companies again, in which case I have to save this and run. In which case now he's going to try to run the filter, and if nothing is returned, he's going to take the fallback.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so that's very typical that you want to filter for this or for this or for this. So this is one way to do it. Another one is there's a pick stream. This one's not perfect, but it's close to what you need. You can like say that you have multiple streams coming in here from somewhere. Let's remove the fallback here just to keep things a bit clean. And let's say we have the default stream and we have the other stream, just as a simple example. And we're gonna take this away from the default here. We're just gonna wire that up. Now, let me say that it should pick the stream other. This isn't super useful yet, but just to show you what's happening, right? And now we're running this, and now basically he's going to pick this one. Now, of course, I specified the name, so this might not be the final version yet. But of course, you can also use a token and pass that in or something. So there's a few ways to do it. Again, this one really needs the exact name. So a common scenario we use this one for is to say we have one stream for admin users that will also see hidden items, for example, right? So if you look at I think the events app, the admin sees more data than the normal user. And so we're using this pick stream to make sure that if it's the admin user, he's going to get the stream that's not filtered, whereas the normal user only gets the filtered stream, which means like, don't show me things in the future or something like that.
So if you change the value to web instead of web XXX, would it pass through the the value filter?
So if I go back to WebXXX, at the moment, the stream pick, of course, is still going to, so this one did find only 2 items, so that's correct. But of course, this pick stream picked the word other. Right, so it's a different purpose. One was the fallback, and the pick stream is meant to do this, to switch between things. So, you know, for example, this isn't super obvious, but you could also do things like query string, like we could just call it stream right now, but it's not exactly what we would want to do, for example, right? You'd want to do like maybe category or something, and you'd pass in a term that matches those 2 stream names or 5 stream names. I would have to check what the example was, but you can check in the events app or in the blog app. I think we're doing that too. Maybe I could quickly check it if it's in the blog app as well, because in the blog app, we're also filtering future blog posts. This is probably the wrong one. We want the root here. So this one here at least shows you quite a sophisticated setup where he would either get like posts by tag, posts by author, posts by category, like based on different parameters that exist or don't exist. And you can see it uses the fallback here. This is another data source which basically just categorizes them by number and will take the first one that returns something. And the blog posts, one of these should have, yeah, exactly. So here, for example, we have a stream picker, which will say, well, if show drafts is true, which is true for admins, okay, then take this stream without filtering it anymore, otherwise hide the future posts. So these are all samples from the blog app. So again, it doesn't have exactly what you're asking for. So far, we've had no problems just solving it with this because it's been doing what we need, and the fallback is usually what we need. But I do see the benefit of creating a data source which just has a choose one of 2 streams depending on parameters here or not.
Yeah, I tried to do that with the fallback, and it seemed to work fine when I only was dealing with a few parameter choices, but when I had like 6 of them, it was messing up. But that could have been my code is wrong. I'll look at it more carefully.
Yeah, and again, there's also the stream fallback by itself, and basically that idea is really just pick the first stream that delivers something, right? And that way you can have queries behind each stream and just number them in the priority you think it should react to.
Very interesting.
Okay.
That's next
You guys
level
hear
over
me?
there.
Yeah.
This thing on?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
I could,
I sense you're going to share something, Jeremy.
yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Awesome.
But Daniel's here, and I get rage angry when people correct me when I'm wrong. So let's see if I can do this and this. Wow, I haven't used Zoom in a while. This is odd. There we go. Okay, look at my email. The heck? There we go. Okay, so you can see my desktop. So I'm launching VS Code. And I don't know how well you guys can see this, but one of the things to pay attention to as you're learning how to do this, IntelliSense is the subject we're on. When VS Code boots up, you need to pay attention to your status bar when you're first getting this working. So My machine's running a little bit slow, but notice extensions start to kick in. And the key one you need to see is we have in the root of the project added, in the right place, this app.solution file, like you would do in Visual Studio, and app.cs proj, which we've customized a little here with our own idea. Now notice extensions just activated. And the next thing that happens, and you got to wait for this, is this projects thing launches, and it has to do with Razor and the .NET Dev Kit and the fact that we're on an ASP.NET Razor page. This right now, actually, if you want to see the log, what this is doing is crawling through the whole website, the whole project, sorry, not the website. And you can see this in here. Make sure you remember that there's an output for the Razor log. And it's basically reindexing your entire site, looking at all the code and making sure it knows about everything. In addition to that, what this CS proj file is doing, and if you guys want to follow along more easily, there is a how-to that Daniel has done here. Daniel Metler has done this. Ours has a couple of missing pieces because we tripped on this a few times. So if you go to, I'll put that link in here. There, that's in the chat. So as we get through this, the main stuff is you need to point it at DLLs for stuff. And instead of just pointing it at a local in-place project, we just actually grabbed the bin the DLLs from the bin folders for certain items like DNN. You can see we've got a folder with all the DLLs from 9.13 to Sexy. This is one of our own custom tools. But with 2Sexy, we're on 1607. So once this is working and this project finishes and says 1, it now recognizes things and things suddenly kick in and work. And what I mean by that, and this starts to get really useful and amazing. Here's a Razor typed. Notice what happens as I start to hover over things. It recognizes the namespace. It recognizes kit. Notice it says it's Service Kit 16. That's sometimes cool to know. Page is coming from Service Kit 16, and activate is actually iPage service. And then you can go down to my user, see where that is, but that's only just the beginning. You know, hovering's no big deal. As you type now, notice this is constantly evaluating as I move the cursor around. It's running commands. So after a while, you're going to want to turn that off because it's distracting. So now you can sit here and go, my user, and the moment you press, notice that's the IntelliSense. It's saying, okay, I've got that. Hit dot. And now you have all of the available ones, including, I guess, most popular ones are the ones I've used the most. But everything is here. Every single item that you could possibly want to do is anonymous. You can basically learn as you go. You know, this has basically stopped me from going to the docs all the time to find out, okay, how do I blah? Or, you know, the occasional gruff comment about, why doesn't it do blah? Why doesn't he know about my use case? But all this stuff is here and working really well. And as you type and get through this stuff, I mean, I've learned a lot just by poking around. All the stuff I did recently with Toolbar Builder and the tweak and button stuff, I learned because of IntelliSense. The documentation has gotten much better on it, so that also helped. But as you sit here and go at kit.toolbar, there it is, let's take an empty one. Oops. Also, once you type the open parens, look at that. You get the entire thing. You can just start moving through whatever you want. I actually want an empty one. I'm going to go new. And basically, piece by piece, suppose I want a new, I have something called company in my content types, when I get comma, change my formatting a little. But you see now, after the comma, oh, it didn't do it. No param order. So now I can move on to something like a tweak. Am I not doing something right? I usually get more than this. There we go. So now it knows, I mean, just from this syntax, I would have found that hard to figure out, but IntelliSense knows I'm on a tweak button and these are the correct things. So now I can start a UI modification. I usually like to put these down so I can read them better. But as you can see, this is phenomenal. I am not sitting here going back and forth in the docs. So this is wonderful. The main things to point out is, and these weren't obvious to me anyhow, you really need the Visual Studio 2022 build tools installed. You don't need the whole Visual Studio. You don't have to install Visual Studio Community. You can just install that one piece, which is out here. And I did the link so that it'll scroll down the page for you. It's this thing right here. Once that's in place and VS Code is running, and you do the setup correctly of these two files in the right place in the root of your project. This one you can copy and paste from Daniel's stuff. And this one you can also copy and paste, but I kind of recommend these modifications if you're interested or willing, or sometimes you may be working in a situation where you don't have a local site running. You can just pile the DLLs into these folders. So just to show you exactly what I mean, if that's not obvious to somebody, there's my C drive, dev folder, just following. I'll show you where the project is first so you can see the root and the path change. So this project is in, oh, I did it right here so you can see it. I left myself notes because I don't remember in real time. So that one's actually in my GitHub local, Beacon 2023. So that's the root of my project. And as you can see, there's my CS proj and my solution file. And so now it's going up 3 folders, 1, 2, 3, right, 3. Down into dev, there's my DLLs, and I split them up between the different projects. So if you want to see, for version 13.12.01, which we're doing some active work on, oh, it's empty. Oh, you didn't see that. So the 16.07, this is all just the 2Sexy DLLs for that version. So as I change versions between projects, I can, if I want, and it usually doesn't matter much, you know, except for, you know, the difference between 13 and 16 is pretty significant. Anyhow, that was not in a good presentation order, and I hope I covered everything. If I didn't, go check out that link. And who has questions on this? Because I have to tell you,
I have comments.
It was hard to get working. And once I discovered the missing pieces and put it together, man, it's fantastic. Go ahead.
So, Jeremy, one thing you could do, at least for DNN, is in that project file, instead of referring to a DLL directly on disk, you can do a NuGet reference to a specific version. And you get the debug DLL and the XML files with code comments and everything.
Really? Is that
yes.
something that needs to be run installed locally?
I haven't tried it in VS Code. I don't know if VS Code will just pull it for you or if you need to do a manual restore.
I think I've seen reference to this when I was researching what was wrong. So
yeah, so instead of
I really want to try those.
Package reference. Instead of reference, it's package reference. And then you can comment, let's say line 15, let's say.
Okay.
And do another line that's going to be package reference, and it's going to be include the same way as you have here, but instead of a path, it's going to be the package name. So let's say .NET-Nuke.Core, and you add a version 9.13.0, and maybe restart VS Code. I don't know if it's going to pull it magically or you need to run a NuGet restore.
I think I need to do, right, NuGet restore. I experimented with part of this, and NuGet restore was one of the steps. So maybe you and I can do this in the next co-coding session offline. I'd
Yeah,
really
yeah.
like to have that working. Because obviously you have to do a little prep to do things this way.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
thanks for mentioning that. I was on to the NuGet thing for a while and gave up. And it sounds like you know the pieces that I didn't, that it might get it working, that will get it working.
Yeah, that would save you from having to maintain those directories.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Sounds good.
If you have any CI or whatever, it works there. You know, you don't have to carry the DLLs around. And we had a discussion, Daniel, about maybe Too Sexy having a NuGet package and like this for the XML docs and stuff. Is that something you gave some thought to?
That sounds hard to do.
So here's the deal, right? We really love it too, but we're still careful in terms of, let's say, letting everybody know about it. Our
Yeah.
biggest concern is that Too Sexy is huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's even the C# part is way over 100,000 lines of code. And what we didn't want to do is end up in a situation that DNN has, where so much of the API is public that it becomes impossible to refactor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So far, I've been the guardian of the public surface, kind of, right? By basically only documenting stuff that you should use. Our code is littered with attributes which say this is public API, this is private API, and the documentation, of course, respects that. But the problem is that, at least so far, I cannot get that information into VS Code.
To show
So
it there, yeah.
if I give people this tool, there's a risk they will just inadvertently use APIs, which we might just change again tomorrow because they were really internal stuff.
Brian Dukes did something for DNN interesting with an attribute for obsolete stuff that uses
Yeah.
code generation in order to put the XML docs appropriate.
We
For
have the
DNN,
same problem.
Might
Here's
be
one of our,
something interesting there.
here's one of our internal tools. So this toSlug command got moved to acu.web. And what we want here is some kind of obsolete comment, or even just this not to appear anymore, so nobody uses it by accident.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little thing, but yeah, I need to learn how to do that too. So if anyone gets onto that and figures it out, speak up soon.
Yeah, because at least the obsolete parameter is actually
shows.
respected in VS Code. You do see a small deprecated flag.
Yeah, here's an example.
Mm.
Here's an example. Anything in this
Yeah, that was
ACU
ignored.
realm should.
No, we saw it. We saw it when you hit the AcuKit.
Yeah.
That one already had it deprecated without the dot.
Huh, it's not doing it. I thought I had
think
my
the whole
obsolete
AcuKit
command in here. There we go.
There.
It's
There it is.
deprecated.
Right. But the
But I
problem,
didn't
of
see
course,
it as
is
I
that
was typing.
cannot mark everything deprecated because I need to be able to code too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I want it not
But
to
your
appear, and it
attributes,
seems like it should be possible.
But the attributes you have, like public API and private API and stuff, there could be something we could do to feed XML docs and mark this is internal, don't use it,
Yeah, so that would be very, very cool.
Yeah.
Because when we're going to like doc effects, there I can control it,
Yeah.
right? But
And
I
you
don't
can't-
know.
You can't just make it like internal or like changing it from public to internal.
No, usually we try to cluster stuff across DLLs just to make sure the architecture doesn't bleed.
Yeah.
And that kind of forces us to make things public.
Yeah, it's not easy.
And I mean, I guess I could, but the point is that once I like bleed internals across the border, then everything that was internal is suddenly available in the other DLLs too, and that's not how it should be.
What is nice if you're writing your own stuff, you can get a lot of information in these tooltips.
Mhm.
We've gotten, I can't remember I did one example where I did everything with highlighted stuff, links out to pages, example code. It's pretty amazing all the stuff it will pick up directly from, like, in our case, a class library.
Mm.
It's really useful.
Yeah, that's cool stuff.
And so the thing that I'm not sure about yet is also if I have a NuGet with the XMLs, then it might not match. Like if you update the DNN, then you might be referencing old NuGets. Right now, the model that Jeremy's using kind of has the idea that the files are not inside DNN, but they're elsewhere, and then you're probably kind of copy pasting them or something. And in that case, you're controlling where the source is anyways. But in many cases for us, it's really just in the DNN, and it should use the exact same version that's in that DNN. So that might also mean that once we figured out the XML generation, which I hope I'll try to get to work with Daniel and Brian, that we might just include the XMLs as well. It makes the gist a bit larger, but it would just be quite nice.
I wouldn't
But if
mind
you
if
have
there
it
was an
only on,
extra
you can have it
install.
only on NuGet.
Oh,
I could, but then you'd
You
always
don't
have to
grow your
update the version that you're referencing in the solution file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and you
the
have to start like being a bit more on par with like semantic versioning and like handling breaking changes and stuff, because you're targeting 16.10. You don't expect 16.11 to have breaking changes, you know.
Yeah, though we do that anyways for any public API.
Yeah.
okay. Anyhow, this is really exciting. I hope other people use it. I also wanted to mention, we cleaned up our own little Accu4 site. This was normally internal. But if you guys, anyone's welcome to poke around here, you'll find some pretty interesting and bizarre stuff and examples of how to do modern things in Too Sexy, and even crazy IIS notes about how to fix weird console errors. So feel free to poke around. We've cleaned it up and you're welcome to check it out.
Very
Cool.
cool.
What does H2R2S stand for?
Help, how to, reminders, recipes, and steps.
Okay.
We've
That's
been
a good
using that for 10 years and we all know what it means. So
Oh, I see.
everybody has their own internal crap, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, thanks for sharing. Well, we're wrapping or getting close to the hour mark here, and but does anybody have any comments or anything super quick they wanted to share in the next 3 minutes?
Come on, someone else do something cool.
What?
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
I am just starting to move over to Too Sexy for a lot of our newer projects. When I need custom content layouts, should I be adding those within the content app itself, or should I create a separate app? What's the best practice for that?
Yeah, so basically an app should be a self-contained thing. Okay, so as soon as it has like special functionality or let's say data manipulation, filtering, processing, whatever, it should be inside an own app. So I don't know what your business is, but yeah, the moment you're like, I'm going to say, make like something like a customer quotes, make an app for that, because you're probably going to visualize in a special way, filter in a special way, only display certain ones on certain pages. So put that in an app. But anything that's really just image text combinations or whatever, we highly recommend to do that in the content area, simply because the UX is slightly different. It's a bit simpler in terms of picking stuff and doing things. And so if it's content, simple content, then I would put it in the content app. Anything else, don't.
Okay.
Yeah. There's also, that's the reason, by the way, why the content app is technically, or let's say the UI is slightly restricted, like the admin section doesn't have queries, for example. And we did that on purpose because, of course, you could make queries. There's nothing technical stopping you. But the problem was that people would just start with the content app and turn it into this huge thing, which we just don't recommend.
Yeah,
And
we were
that's
guilty
why-
of that long ago.
Yeah, and that's why we restricted it on purpose.
Okay.
It's also, I gotta add, it's cool to have the differentiation in your head. The content app is pretty much for unstructured content. Anytime you have structure, list, details, items, that's when you want to do your own app and keep it encapsulated. So hopefully that's helpful to somebody, but that's the way we do it here. If it's unstructured content and you're splattering stuff on the page, yeah, modify those views and make them your own.
It's interesting because, you know, I'll unashamedly admit we don't use content ever. I don't know if that's right or wrong, so I know I would be interested in understanding the real use case for it, but we just separate everything into this nice little package. But we do get in trouble every once in a while, you know, where we build an app for this and build an app for this and then realize, oh crap, those really are related now. And we either have to move stuff over or jump through some hoops and exports and imports and things like that. But I don't know, it definitely keeps things clean for us, but I don't know if it's the right way. So I would love to understand the real use case for
Yeah, one of the
Well-
real things we learned to differentiate on was make sure we understand how often the client is going to change the content. We would build a little mini app and do stuff for people, sometimes even in the content app, and then find out that they weren't making a change but once every 2 years, and that's not productive. So leave it on the page as content, even if it lends itself to structuredness. So
Well,
made a-
part
made
of
a
what I'm
point.
wondering is I come from using third-party themes that have lots and lots of panes. I show that to a new customer who doesn't have a lot of technical skill, but they want to edit the site. And it's just overwhelming. I've got 50 panes. I don't know where to put my stuff. I want a 1/3, 2/3 here, and a 2/3, 1/3 here, and I want 4 columns across on this section to feature things. And I think I'm kind of leaning towards David. Instead of using content, whatever the customer needs, I would have a canned set of layouts and I would call it an app where they could add multiple content pieces, mix and match. I mean, is that what you guys are doing now? Do you have just content pane and you stick apps in that and stack them? Or are you still putting things in pane layouts?
We minimize
pane.
the panes,
Yeah,
to not be a pain.
Right.
Control all your layout and the views, the templates.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it does require obviously you to plan out your site and build the views accordingly and all that.
Right. I'm finding limiting our customers is making them more productive. If you give
one
them
of the-
this giant toolbox, you've got the 96 crayons in a box and a sharpener. It's too much. Give them 8 crayons.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's quite the art to get to a point where your full site is as simple and as minimalistic as it can be from an app standpoint, and views.
Yep.
Yeah, we
That-
used to
that
use
comes
things
over
like the
time.
Porto theme, and it was shocking how confused customers got when they had all those crazy pane arrangements. And we haven't touched that since about 2018, and thankfully left all that behind.
Okay.
Bit
I
of a
also have one
paradigm shift.
insight that's kind of related to that, and that is that once we're going mobile and responsive, right, then the reading order isn't necessarily left to right anymore, because things that might have been side by side just by coincidence because the panes were like that, well, something's going to happen. And if you have a list of, let's say, pictures, or if you have whatever, if that unit of information can reorganize itself to the screen, then it's going to look nice on both desktop and mobile. And it's not going to have to worry whether it's in a scenario where the thing beside it suddenly loses context because it moved underneath, right? Because if you had like 7 things here and 7 things here, but they were actually matching up, well, that's a problem if you have 2 different modules and now they're below each other, right? And if each unit is just self-contained, they can reorganize. It looks very lightweight on the desktop, which is what people enjoy nowadays. And on mobile, you have no problems whatsoever.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody for joining. We're going to wrap this meetup and be done with it. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. I guess we're close. Well, we're hump day here. So I guess
Yeah.
remainder of your week and this coming weekend and the next month. I'm not sure yet if there will be a December meetup or not, just due to scheduling challenges on my end, but I will definitely post it if we can find a slot for that to happen. But thanks everybody for joining. Worst case scenario, we'll wrap back up in January.
And there is a SoFri meeting on the 16th.
That sounds about right. I would have to look it up. I think that's
Mhm.
right there, Jeremy.
I think I looked at it yesterday.
Yeah, not in that headspace right now. I should be because it's a meetup, right? I'll go ahead and end the recording here, and hope everybody has a great afternoon,
Thanks.
evening, or
Bye-bye.
morning, wherever you are. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Awesome.